We always have an idea about what it means to be a leader, what it means to lead on a topic, how much knowledge do you really need before you can talk about something. If you ask people to imagine what does a leader look like, you will get very interesting answers. I want to help us reimagine a little bit. What is a leader? What does a leader sound like? And to also start fostering this idea that leadership starts with
Christina Bizoumi, the Senior Director of Product at Universal Robots, also spearheading digital innovation and digital experiences. Christina is also a coach and a strategic advisor, and she really wants to support people step into their leadership roles and be more intentional with their leadership experiences.
Each one of us out there, every day, is a leader. You lead by your behavior. From how we queue in the coffee shop, to how we talk to our kids, to how we talk to our co-workers, all of that is leadership. And I want to move away from the stereotypical leading that we've been watching in movies. It's impossible to be that leader in the world that we're living in. Nobody has the answers.
This whole idea of awareness, being intentional about what everyday footprint you leave, some people will feel, oh my God, that's a lot of pressure.
Is it pressure or is it power? Everyone is empowered to make a change and to make an impact. Just remember that you have a power. Don't wait for someone to give it to you. Whatever type of work you do, it is about people. So how do you show up? How do you listen before you talk? How do you understand what motivates those people? And how do you bring them with you? And I can tell you my secret, I haven't...
Welcome to FemLead, the podcast on female leadership and role models. This show aims to inspire and equip you with the tools you need to navigate your career plans. FemLead brings inspiring career perspectives and strategies to guide your path to success. Your host, Alexandra, will interview role models on new exciting topics with each episode. If you like what you hear, give us a review and subscribe to the show on your preferred streaming platform. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of FemLead Podcast. I'm here with Christina Bizoumi. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we're very excited because this is one of our first podcasts recorded in a podcast studio. And I hope if you're on YouTube, you can see that we've really tried to upgrade our setup. And we invited a friend here for this pilot because we believe that Christina will bring a lot of insights. But she's also a friend of the podcast. She's a strategic advisor for FemLead. So there's a lot of learnings that you can get from her. But we also feel very comfortable to be doing this interview together. I really, really look forward to what Christina will share. And to give you a little bit more of a context, Christina is now the Senior Director of Product at Universal Robots here in Denmark. And prior to that, she's been working more than 7 years at IKEA, also spearheading digital innovation and digital experiences. And on top of her professional CV that I'm sure we're going to discuss in detail, Christina is also a coach and a strategic advisor, and she really wants to support people step into their leadership roles and be more aware and intentional with their leadership experiences. And today we wanted to meet, so we discuss Christina's experience, but I'm really impressed by her, to be honest, approach to leadership because, Christina, I'm going to stop talking on third person about you, but you are very intentional with the way that you communicate what you want. And I mean, because I also already know you for a while and you've been joining all of our setups and you know very well what we do as well, I think I can speak also for the people that have met you that you are very good at looking at a situation and I would say approaching it from a coaching perspective, as if not you need to have the right answer, but kind of going back and reflecting on why is this a problem, how this situation can improve, and really giving more the solution-oriented approach. And today we want to talk about leadership philosophies. We want to talk about exactly that, how to approach a situation, how to make it a better experience for everyone. We're going to talk about coaching, how to coach others to thrive, and how to embed that in your own setup. We're going to talk about parenthood a little bit because this is a big part of your life as well. And I know that you're doing a great job being a leader, but also you're very aware of the fact that you have a daughter and you want to be an example for her as well. And also we're going to wrap up by talking about how to thrive in senior leadership positions from a young age, because you are a great example of really building a cool career. I'm going to stop introducing Christina because I don't want to spend half of the episode just talking about how cool she is. But Christina, give us a little bit about an introduction about yourself. And I would love to hear how you feel today, because I know this was a big deal for all of us. Feel free to also share a little bit about you.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me here today. It is an honor. And I would also say meeting you has really inspired me to take a different trajectory also in my career, in the sense that we always have an idea about what it means to be a leader, what it means to lead on a topic, how much knowledge do you really need before you can talk about something. Mm-hmm. And I think you really taught me to move out of this imposter syndrome mindset and actually start talking about the things that I care about. And I remember joining the conference a couple of years ago and being inspired by how you brought a lot of people together and you made them share their passions. And I think if I was to talk a little bit about my life, that would be the word passion. And this is also how many times people describe me. That's sort of the energy, right? And that energy is also what I pour into everything that I do, whether that's work, whether that's parenthood, whether that's figuring out a new sport that I want to learn, whether that's a language, or exploring a new country. Because I would say that my life is a little bit of a collection of people, a collection of experiences. And then why leadership and why is that important? Because I think we have a lot of images in our heads. If you ask people to imagine what does a leader look like, I think you will get very interesting answers. And you can say I'm passionate about that. And this is where I want to help us reimagine a little bit. What is a leader? What does a leader sound like? And to also start fostering this idea that leadership starts with you. Each one of us out there, every day, is a leader. You lead by your behavior. You give an example. And I think that's something also that I picked up a lot from my work life, of course, at IKEA, where they talk about this value of leading by example. So I think it's very important to remember that in everything we do, from how we queue in the coffee shop, to how we talk to our kids, to how we talk to our coworkers, to how we behave in a stressful situation, all of that is leadership. And we have the ability to make an impact every day. So we should remember that. It's not about sitting in a specific table. It's not about being responsible for a specific budget. It's about actually leading yourself in the small and the big situations every day and remembering that you're setting an example and you have an impact.
Absolutely. And this whole idea of awareness and I'd say being intentional about what sort of legacy, but also everyday footprint do you leave. I think it's really important to discuss a little bit more in details because the way you share it, some people will feel, oh my God, that's a lot of pressure. If you tell someone that's like just trying to figure out things that everything you do leaves some sort of impact and it might lead you into this and this direction, some people will be like, okay, this is a lot. So when it comes to, I'd say, managing all of these experiences, and maybe you can talk from your experiences, but when you are in these situations where you have a lot of opportunities and experiences, what are some of the key insights that you are now taking into your jobs? Because you talk about leadership in general terms, which is also something we want to talk about today, but I would love to move into already the current role that you have, which is leading product teams. And leading by example product teams, it's difficult. It's, working in product is a very volatile and interesting job because depending on what product you're trying to build, it can be very different. So can you talk a little bit about that, those insights from your leadership experiences in product and also some lessons that you learned along the way?
Absolutely. And maybe I will start. I really love that you put the perspective of, is it pressure or is it power? I actually see it from the perspective that everyone is empowered to make a change and to make an impact. And it is not in the sense of you are accountable, but it's just remember that you have a power. Don't wait for someone to give it to you. And I want to start because I'm reading a book right now from Ginny Rometty. This is the former chairman and CEO of IBM. And it talks about good power. And one part of the principles that she's using is being in the service of others. And I think when we talk about leadership and when we talk about product as well, what is product really doing? Product is there to solve a problem. We're in the service of the customers that we have. The person that has the problem and that will end up using the digital product that we are actually building. So that's the first important thing to remember, regardless if you're doing product, if you're doing projects, if you're doing anything, strategy, who's your customer? Who are you in the service of? And what is the problem that you're solving for them? The second part is a lot about having a clear purpose. So when you want to bring people together, when you want to lead the team, what is the purpose? How does it resonate with others? And how does it connect to the company strategy? This is really important because when you're talking to people, you have to be able to build a story. That's your storytelling. And this is what people will follow. And then the other part is a lot about remembering that it is about people in the end, right? When you lead the team, when you want to lead the project even via influence, whatever type of work you do, it is about people. So how do you show up? How do you listen before you talk? How do you understand what motivates those people? And how do you bring them with you? That's also essential because people they have a lot to say. And being curious and trying to understand what is it that motivates you? How do you connect to the strategy? How do you connect to my purpose? That will help you bring them along. And then there is another component which I think sometimes we are not that much aware of, but you have actually spent a lot of energy setting a light on, is sponsorship. So we are in times where all companies are being challenged, right? We have a lot of intense budget discussions, a lot of prioritization discussions, both when it comes to product, but across the whole company, right, on a strategy level. And from talking to my peers, everyone is having those discussions. So the question is, who wants you to succeed? So who within the business is actually standing for the same purpose that you're standing and will remember when sitting in a room where we have to make a priority to actually talk on your behalf? I think that's also something that we often overlook. So we say, I'm doing this is the right thing, is the right thing for my customer. I'm super passionate about it. My team loves it. But then someone stops it. Why is that? Maybe we have also forgotten to secure the sponsorship. So that is something I would urge everyone to think about. How does this align to the strategy, whatever I'm doing, and who cares about it beyond me and my team?
I know I've already spent a lot of time on it, and I've heard similar iterations of what you just said multiple times, but I just feel like another eureka moment when you said it like that, because we forget that at the end of the day, it is a circle of trust and a circle of experiences that will bring us to the next iteration. Like you learn and then you try again in a different setup, and then you learn and you try again. And every time you'll try again or you have a new, I'd say, episode of your experiences, you already have all of this prior knowledge that you bring with you. And integrating that into yourself, I would say, into your own experiences and into your career sounds easy, but you actually forget so much of what you've learned. And you cannot really be like, okay, all of this happened before, so I know exactly what to do. So it's way harder in practice because, like you said, I've talked about it, and honestly, the moment I heard it now, I was like, I have so many ideas now that you said it again about how to in everyday kind of interaction to react, right?
And I can tell you my secret. I have a notebook. I have many notebooks. Like I think when they talk about what are you going to say when a fire happens, it will be my notebooks and pictures. And I have a notebook, which now is built, so I need a new one, where I write all the great things that I read, but also all the great reflections that I have. And when I'm taking a new role or when I'm stuck in a situation, or even recently someone in my team asked the question like, how are we going to handle this? How do we think about it? I was like, let me think about it and come back to you. And I opened my notebook. And I actually went back there and I tried to look at my own good advice, but other great things that I also read. It's a secret weapon.
Yeah.
To take the time to reflect and to write down things.
Absolutely.
Because you forget your own wisdom, but also things you read.
Absolutely. That's a very good kind of tip right here. I want to talk about leading ourselves when we talk about leadership, because it's often the first step when you want to become a leader, that you are able to, I guess, organize yourself and also lead your own setup within your own, I would say, context, right? When you need to lead yourself and others, so you are a people manager or a people leader, of course, what do you think is the impact that then you hope to drive through this? Because you do spend a lot of time reflecting and making updates, and I wonder what's the goal when it comes to impacting others and when we look at leadership.
So my goal as Christina is actually to build this power within each one of us. And when I mean power, I mean this empowerment that I am worthy. I have what I need in me to actually strive in life. I have a lot of talents and strengths, and I need to find the best way to use them to fulfill my own purpose and help people understand and define what is their purpose. And I work a lot, both with myself and with others on that, in terms of when I take over a team, I'm looking, who are you? What gives you energy? What takes your energy away? Are you in the right role? Are your strengths and your talents in line with what the company is asking from you? And if not, how can we find the best place? Because I think many times, right, when I meet people, when I talk to friends, we also talk a lot, I hear two things. One is either I'm doubting if I'm worthy, right? A lot of us spend time thinking, am I the right person for the job? Can I do this, right? We put it back into the worthiness. And then the second aspect is, are you in the right place? Like, if you're asking yourself too many questions, are you really in the right place? So I really try to take that approach both when I'm leading myself in the everyday, when I'm leading others, when I'm coaching, because now I'm also starting to coach more, to really try to empower others to get their answers. Because I really believe that coaching is all about evoking that awareness and leading, right? And I want to move away from the stereotypical leading that we've been watching in movies. There's a leader, the leader walks through the room, and everyone stops the leader and asks for a question. What should I do now? What should I do now? They approve, they disapprove, and they move on. It's impossible to be that leader in the world that we're living in. Nobody has the answers. So I think that's like a big part. And then the second part, when it comes to my impact, I would really like to positively impact the many. And I think that, again, comes from my, I would say, IKEA upbringing, because I think, some things in life beyond our parents, we also get educated a lot from the companies we work for. And IKEA has this vision of a better everyday life for the many. And when we had conversations and we had to make decisions in the business, who do we side with? Do we side with the many or do we side with the few? We always chose the many. And that's something that also stayed with me. And this is why I went to Universal Robot, because they also want to bring automation for everyone, anywhere. And that's also why I work with you, because you created the platform for the many, right? All I need is access to internet to listen to the podcast. And you want to bring these opportunities, these lessons, right, to the many. And I think I use that as a value for myself. When I'm doing this, is it just in service of myself, or is it also in service of the many?
Yeah, listen up, people, because this is great. This is great advice on also how to look at yourself beyond what you have been taught a leader should be or how a leader should behave. I really think it's fantastic what you're sharing. And you talked a lot about, to put it in other words, being intentional. You say that you need to take the decisions, and also that the way that we have been portraying leadership, especially in movies and just outside in the media, is that you always have the answers, but that's not true. So for some people, this is very upsetting if they believe they have the answers to be told you actually are wrong, or people then will just walk on eggshells around them and no one will tell them, which I also think it's sad, but it happens, right? It happens in small companies, it happens in big companies, it happens in everyday life, that you are not aware of things to improve because you're not asking for that. You don't want to know those things. So let's talk when you are intentional, and let's talk about the situation where you do want to be the best version of yourself and you want to be in the service of others and ideally many others, right? How do you define this intentionality? And basically, how do you practice it in your leadership style?
That's a very good question. And to be intentional, you need to first be conscious. So what I try to do, or what I've worked a lot, I would say, with myself as well. So just to say, it's not that I woke up one morning and then suddenly I was conscious and
Thank you for that.
intentional about my leadership. So I think that's the first place to start. So I had an opportunity to actually work a lot on how I lead myself and how I lead others. That was through company trainings. IKEA invested a lot in me. That was through coaching myself. I decided that I wanted to learn more about myself. I enjoyed a lot because I was in product working with agile coaches. And then I started realizing the power of coaching. And in that sense, evoking that awareness in me. What are my behaviors? Because I spent a lot of time, earlier in my career thinking, oh, that person did this to me. Or this happened to me. And then I started realizing that we talk a lot about things that happened to us rather than this happened and this is where I am in it, right? So I spend a lot of time in this looking at my circle of influence versus what is outside of my circle of influence, and then building that consciousness. So for me, what is important was to distill, first of all, my values. So what is important? And for me, it's respect, first and foremost. That has to exist in every relationship I have. Then it's authenticity. When we're having this conversation, it has to be something, even though I prepare meticulously about everything that I do, it has to be something that comes from my heart, something that I feel honestly, that I stand for. Mm-hmm. And then it's about also curiosity. I want to be curious. I want to learn something new. I want to learn how do you record in a studio, right? I want to learn how do we work with robotics. This is a new industry. I want to learn about 3D. I want to learn about new things, a new language. I want to integrate in the country that I live in, right? Or understand how children think because it's a new generation. And then it's also about courage for me. And that's a tough one. And that I've read and led a lot with. It's about daring to stretch yourself, daring to go into an area that you know nothing about, daring to also call out behaviors that are not inclusive, and daring to stand for the many or for the few, even though actually standing for the few could give you a better income. So that courage is also very important for me. And it's something I've also practiced since I was very young. And then how do you become intentional? Well, once you know, right? Those are the things I stand for. Those are really important for me. Then you can start making choices with that lens. Is this role bringing me those 4 components? Is this relationship with a friend, with a partner, with a family member, honoring those 4 aspects? Can I be who I am? Does that person respect me? Is that person allowing me to be courageous? Or is that person holding me back? Can I be curious, right? Or is there no space for this in this relationship? And can I be my authentic self? Can I bring my whole self, right? So it's just to say it's not all about work, because it's also about our life. And then use that to use, those parameters, whatever those values are for you, to use them in order to decide, how do I invest my time? How do I invest my resources? And what is my purpose, if these are the important things for me? Because then you can bring yourself to the world every day with a little bit more intention. And that will bring you closer to your dreams and what is meaningful for you.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and it's hard work.
Yeah. That's why being a good leader just doesn't happen by itself. And I feel that sometimes we misunderstand the meaning of being a leader. A leader is not a manager. The moment you get a position in a company, and I'm talking from a professional standpoint now, but it can also be, let's say, the role of the planner or the, leader of the tribe, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't mean that you are the actual de facto leader of that environment, because leading and supporting a group of people that genuinely want to be there with you, it's hard work. And you wanting to grow through that, it's also hard work, because it requires you to not be right all the time, like you said. And there's 2 things I want to point out that I think we spoke about them, but I'm not sure how much we kind of paused to really reflect. One, question always, and this is I also have from coaching and therapy and all of these different personal development things I've been doing, how do I co-create my situation now? Because it cannot only be that someone else impacts something without you letting them or without you co-creating that scenario. So if something doesn't go well, or when things go well, you can also reflect on what is my part in this, because we always play a part in it. Even if it's good, or especially when it is bad, it doesn't happen by itself. And the moment I realized that, I was like, oh my God, I have something that I can do to impact this. I didn't know. No one told me I have the power to say, if this is a very bad situation for me, I don't like it, the first thing I can do is actually get out of it, for example. Or in situations where that's more difficult, because we're not naive here, we're not talking about only professional life, but let's say you have some personal situations where you cannot get out of situations that are bad. There's always a thought of like, who can help me? How can I get closer to exiting or to creating a better setup for myself, because this is not working out? And take that time and reflection and maybe ask for help, or always ask for help if you don't know, to figure out, and not just expect that things will just happen. And the moment I realized that, and it wasn't really something I knew up until a few years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago, I started looking at situations, especially where I don't like either the outcome or the current setup, and understand where am I co-creating this and what can I change to have a better outcome. Because if I can change something and I see progress, it means that I actually just need to be more intentional, like you said about it. And then the second thing I wanted to point out is change is difficult. And somehow we have been told that Cinderella could just come out at midnight and everything would just be perfect. But outside of fairy tales, that part does not exist. And I really want to outline that, because no one told me, or I didn't really pay a lot of attention to change management up until I had to do big change management projects, to understand how difficult it is to tell someone everything you've been doing so far may be good, but now we need to change. No one really likes to be told, just change your setup out of a sudden. You easily you feel comfortable, you get more used to things, and you don't want to change them too often. So when that is the, let's say, day-to-day setup, that, when you work in a big company, things can change a lot or not, or whatever. A lot of people don't like it. And I think that also applies to your personal life. If things keep changing and you have a group of friends or a group of people in your life that doesn't like, change, then you kind of start feeling like, why is this uncomfortable? Because you didn't think about it, but the change is not de facto for everyone. So I think that's it's also a good reflection when you look at all of these different values and how is this getting me closer or to the setup that I want, that it matters. All of this environment and values and intentional reflections, they matter for the outcome. It can't just happen by itself. It's I think it's a bit of an interesting setup to consider. And I'm gonna stop talking about my views, because I really want to see all of your views. But I'm really happy that we discussed this. I think it's a fantastic topic to also let people think a little bit more about how we have the power and how much we give it away to others. So let's talk about this topic more in depth. And when it comes to alignment, let's say you do the work, how do you ensure that this behavior that you have now as a leader aligns with other people, both teammates and other leaders? Because if you work for yourself, not everybody will do the same, and not everybody should be expected to do the same. So how do you then find common ground?
It's a good question. And you also touched upon so many good things before around the change, right? And finding that common ground, both in change, right? Both in a purpose. And I personally start from the common ground has to already exist between me and the company values. If the company values and my values don't meet, then it will probably be an uphill battle, as I call it, the salmon swimming up the river. I've been the salmon in my life way too many times. That's also fun. It's part of me having courage. But it also takes tons of energy. So choose when you want to be the salmon. So I would start with...
I'll quote that.
Yes, do that. My husband is also from Norway, so we have a very close connection to salmon and rivers. But it's just that choose wisely. Where will you put that energy? So I start with that. Is the company values and vision and mission in line with me and with what I stand for? Because of course there's tons of companies in the world. I can choose, right? In that sense, where do we align? And then when it comes to people, then we have to find that it's back to that curiosity. Before I go out and say what I stand for, I need to hear, what does the team stand for? What is it that is important to everyone? And then where do we find that common ground, right? So what is the common starting point for us as a team, and how can we co-create, like you said before? How can we actually co-create what we stand for as a team? Because then we can make and I actually made our team back in June, make a manifesto that says, as a team, we stand for this. We believe in that, and we want to be known for this. And that's quite powerful, because then you ask the team to co-create it. I said, take a post-it, write down, what is it that you stand for? What is it that you believe in? What do you think we should be known for in the organization? And I think that's powerful, because then you move from the me to the we. And this is also what leadership is about, right? And you talked about before the powerful leaders. For me, the powerful leader in an organization is not the title. Is a person with influence. There is several people in organizations that they are the true leaders. And those are the ones you need to look for. And that's also when you talk about change before, right? You want to drive change, and we're all in a phase where companies transform all the time. Our lives change from one day to another, right? It feels at least that the world is moving much faster. And then it's about when you are in an organization, try to see who is it that people listen to? Who is it that people go to for advice? Those unofficial leaders and informal leaders are the most important ones, because these are the ones that will tell you what's really happening in the organization. Leadership, like you put it, is not a role. It's not something that you earn by your title. It's something that you earn through your work. And we need to remember that. And we need to work more with the we rather than the I. I think that's where you start meeting and aligning.
Yeah, it's hard, and it's a journey, like you said, which is why leaders are not easy necessarily to find in each organization. When you have, when you talk about the leadership team, is like you actually know that in many places, people switch roles quite often. Mm-hmm. And I think that's because you also need to kind of fit the purpose of the current strategy and setup. And sometimes people will be like, this was my contribution, and now it's time for the next contribution. Mm-hmm. And that's also fair, because you shouldn't expect from someone to just be, like you said, available for every other iteration of whatever the organization, for example, is going through, and whatever the team needs, right? So I think it's also an important point to note that we ourselves as leaders, future leaders, and people in organizations, the more you know yourself, the more you know also where it makes sense for you to be. And there will be some people that you will meet in your life that will tell you exactly, this is not me. What you're looking for is not me. And that's, I think, a blessing when you have this opportunity of engaging and being like, this is actually not me. But I know a couple of people that could potentially have a great setup for you if you give them a chance. So that's another side note that I was reflecting on while you were talking about.
And I love it. And it's back to, it's spot on, right? It has to be the right leader for the right challenge. Mm-hmm. You have leaders that are visionary. They want to take something and build it from scratch. They want to talk about a bold vision and bring people with them. You have leaders that love a transformation. They're like, give me a mess, I'll go in, and then I'll try to find a way out. They love this complex problem solving. They like to, build a big purpose and then move people with them. They love the struggle, right? It's because it really serves them. They like these complex problems. Then you have leaders that are servant leaders. They work mostly for others, right? They want to empower others. They want to make them the best that they can be. So it's also important, exactly like you said, to look at a role and judge, is this the role for me, right? Is this going to use my talents and my strengths in the best possible way? And can I serve the organization? And also, like you said, to recognize now the organization is changing. They need a different type of leadership. Is this something where I want to stretch? Will it give me something? Will I be able to do it in a way that I will honor the people that I'm here to serve and then make that decision?
And I'm happy you said that, because one of my follow-up questions was, what sort of leadership styles you've encountered. And like you said, it really depends on the different timeline and path that each organization is on. But on the note of empowering others, I also want to take 2 minutes to talk about how do you empower others to find answers? Because you said a couple of the, I'd say, to use an agile term, artifacts, processes you've used, but not everybody will, first of all, have access, know how to use them, even if they're being given instructions. Not everybody will kind of follow through. And also, sometimes we need to be inspired to do these changes, because like we talked about, change is not necessarily easy, and being in this constant transition, let's say, phase is not comfortable for many people. So they need to be inspired. How do you, as a coach, and maybe deep diving into that, how is your role as a coach actually supporting this idea of empowering others? And I also had a note on, being a parent and using that both at work with team, but also looking from a more, supporting at home with children in general, for them to become also people that will be able to coexist with others in a professional setup. We have a lot of listeners that have kids, and there have been requests to talk about being a career woman or a career parent, and also being a role model for your children. I know it's a very complex, long question, but let's start with empowering others, and then let's go into the into the second bit.
I think they have a commonality. And the reason why I personally chose to take an education as a coach was actually to improve my parenting style. Fun fact.
Okay.
It was something that my daughter started saying that it made me reflect. She was saying for a period, now my daughter is 5 years old, soon 6, around 4, she started saying, try to listen to me. And she said it a few times. And I made a promise to myself that I would be aware in that sense, right? I will try to hear when I see patterns repeat in her. And she was saying that, like, try to listen to me, try to listen to me. Then I spoke with my husband and I was like, she feels not heard. She's 4 years old and she feels not heard. And then I tried to go back and reflect, and I started the coaching course, and I realized something that and of course I've read tons of parenting books, from how to keep them alive to how to, create a safely attached human, because we're all struggling with a lot of things as adults, right? That's why we all go to therapy, or several of us invest in ourselves to understand, why do I have those operating patterns and behaviors? How can I rewire myself, right? To appreciate myself, to love myself, to listen to myself more. And that goes back to that listening. So what I realized was that, in essence, we come from this traditional model of parenting, which is, I know best. Several of us have heard in our childhood at some point or another from an adult, if not necessarily our parent, because I said so. Right? We asked why. Why should I do this? Because I said so. And then I started challenging myself, right, on what is the parenting style that we have. And there is a book out there called The One Book You Wish Your Parents Have Read, and your child will be glad that you read it. And I read that book as well. And the major transformation happening here between old school parenting, you could say, or traditional parenting, because it's not nice to call anything old school. Some things that I do are old school for you and the newer generations, But the traditional parenting has this starting point of authority, which you also meet in leadership sometimes these days still.
Mm-hmm.
I know best. My experience has taught me this, right? And then there's a new part, the new way of parenting and leading, which is dialogue. Let's have an exchange. And rather than me being the person that knows, I can be your guide in this journey. And this is what I really liked about coaching, and that I try to bring actively. I make an active choice every day to try to bring it also in the way that I parent, in terms of I'm here to guide you. My job here is to keep you safe as a parent, but also from a leadership perspective, right? Make sure you don't fall into a big hole, right? But also, if we can imagine, the coaching journey as a cave. Each one of us has our own cave, right? There are spots that are bright and they're shining and cozy and warm and nice to be in, and then there's dark parts in that cave. And what I want to do is I want to be that guide. I bring the light, right? Mm-hmm. I can hold the lamp and say, hey, I see a dark corner here. What is this about? How is this impacting you day to day in your life? What could we do about it? And have that same dialogue also with my daughter, right? So we sit and have this conversation. The other day she asked me like, Mom, I feel you decide too much lately. Why is that? And I was like, imagine I would have asked that to my parents. Absolutely not. But it's just something I didn't think about, right? But she thinks about it. So I said, let's have that discussion, Olivia. Maybe I shouldn't decide that much. And then I went back to, my job is to keep you safe. This is what I care about. But I also want us to have fun. I want us to learn things together. I want you to teach me things. She has taught me plenty of things, right? So it's also about moving into a space where it's okay that I don't know everything. Mm. It's okay, most people that probably have older kids, especially teenagers, they are in a situation where most of the things the kids are experiencing, they have never experienced themselves. Not in this age. I talk to a lot of colleagues and friends, and we can't anymore have the answers, right? So how do we move into a space where we're comfortable with the unknown? We're comfortable leading people that know much more than us in specific topics. I work in robotics. I work with a lot of people that are, much more experienced and knowledgeable on the topics that we work with. I worked with 3D and AR before. I like working with new technologies, right? I will never be the expert. That's not my job. My job is to guide those people and to ask the right questions so they can actually reflect on what we're doing, on how we're doing it, because many times the process impacts the outcome directly, right? And the same with my daughter. I reflect that I really try to tell her, when you do this, how does it make you feel? And I try to make her listen to herself. Because I think that's what has been lacking from, when I meet people around me. We're not necessarily great at listening at ourselves, listening at our gut, listening at that inner voice. So that's I see myself as a guide,
How do you get the patience?
How do I get the patience? I'm not sure people would describe me as patient, the closest ones to me, but I would say, in the parenting, I draw back memories from my mom. My mom is very patient. And she has always been great at dialogue and great at listening. She's also a teacher. So she knows that, kids have a lot of great things to teach us. And she gives the space. So I think, sometimes when I'm not that patient, I try to say, could I be more like my mom? I give myself that challenge. Sometimes I count. I count to 20. I count to 100. It's not that easy. At work, I think it's easier because it's also not that personal. With kids, it's also sometimes, we fall into that trap, again, back to the traditional viewpoint that what my child does is a reflection of me. How my child behaves right now shows that maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I haven't taught them better, and all of those society voices that we have absorbed. So that's a little bit more difficult because you're very aware. You think, what are others thinking about me right now, not about my child? And the moment you start doing the same that we do with adults, to say that that is its own person, right? My daughter is her own person. She has great strengths. She also has things that she needs to master through different ages. She needs to learn how to handle emotions. And I need to guide her through that. My job is not to keep her in check and not to keep others happy, right? So I think that's where the patience sometimes gets lost, because you see others' behavior reflecting on you. And the moment you're able to move away from that and say, you know what, my team made this choice and the outcome was not what we expected. Okay, what did we learn from that? That doesn't mean that my team was not doing it doesn't reflect on them, it doesn't reflect on me. It's just more, we tried something, there was a good intention, there was effort put in it. For me, as long as we put the effort, then we cannot control the outcome. And it doesn't reflect on who we are. It goes back to this, right? Why do we make it about us? Because if we start from a point where we don't feel worthy, right? I'm not a good parent. I am not a good leader. I am, the more we talk about those stories, then the harder it is for us to be patient or to disconnect from the situation and see it as an observer and as a guide rather than someone that has to come in and fix something, right? And that's the trap that we fall if we've been great individual contributors. We're like, you know what? I'll just fix it myself. Nobody learned from those situations. Neither our kids, neither our peers, neither our team. It's just that we get the job done. But that's very short term.
Yeah.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. Oh my God. I mean, yeah, the amount of time I've spent thinking how to make this a better experience for the many, and I ended up being either, being the one that fixes things or being the one that's like, you know what, I'll just do it my way because I know at least I can somehow expect the outcome to be this. This happened many times. So now I'm thinking, what a great realization and further reflection that that shouldn't be the goal. Because like you said, we don't learn anything, and also we're not creating a better setup for the team, for the many, right? So it's really good, really, really good stuff you're sharing here. It's yeah.
And also, you said before something that stayed with me. What if you don't have the resources, right? What if you don't have a coach? What if your company doesn't invest in you? Or there is no budget, right, to invest right now? Then also with the things that happen a lot and you see patterns, right, and patterns that bother you a lot, then just start writing down why. And ask that why 5 times. I think that's a very common thing that we say, right? Also in business, ask 5 times why. Why is this bothering me? And then when you get the answer, why is this a problem? And again, and why is this a problem? Right? Because many times by asking that why, you land a little bit deeper, right? Why is it a problem that a small child doesn't want to bike the rest of the way home? Why is it a problem that we have to take a break? There is a lot there that will help you probably build that consciousness on what is it that I'm associating it with? And how can I disassociate that?
Absolutely. I want to talk about you being a senior leader with so much wisdom at a relatively young age for what we see portrayed outside. And if you go to many companies, you'll see the I'd say leadership teams, and then you'll wonder first, where are all the women? And also, where are the new? In some companies, you'll also ask yourself, where are the new generations? Like, where is this new kind of vibe of leadership? How is this going to be portrayed? Because some of us, like you said, some of us have been used to the traditional leadership style, where up until our parent generations, things were like that. Now we're trying to change things. The new generation, God help us all, that we will figure out how to work together, because there's all these reports about how we are not going to get along. And I'm like, I really hope that's just part of like the transformation journey that we're all in leadership. But when it comes to actually, I'd say, bridging this leadership dilemma, so to speak, I would like to ask you, how do you see yourself as a senior leader in organizations, and what challenges did you face because you have a lot of responsibility. And I can definitely see how, especially by not being a subject matter expert in very hard tech and hardware companies as well, it might be difficult.
It's a very good question. And I want to start, you said yourself before, a lot of people are wondering, how are we going to work across generations, right? And right now we're in a unique point where we have 5 generations in the workplace. And that's a lot to navigate. And why? Because we all stand for different values, right? And I have always been curious in the sense of like, I like to talk to people that are much older than me, people that are much younger than me. I feel very privileged because our sitter is 15 years old, and I think she's educating me day to day on many things. I like to hang out with people of different ages, and I think you know that. It gives me different perspectives, it gives me different energy, and something that I come across a lot when I talk to older generations, and I recall also from when I was a teenager, is that people always express this worry. How will the new generation manage? Look at them, they're so weak. They have all this, new ideas. They have all this, concerns. How will they manage? And somehow I'm wondering if people fail to look at history, because new generations have always propelled us forward, right? That's what humankind is about. It's about growth. It's about stretch. It's about innovation. It's about new ways. So we keep having this conflict a little bit around who is strong, who is weak, right? It's not about that. Absolutely not. It's about who is curious. If you ask me who's going to work great between a 60-year-old and a 20-year-old, you can say, in the workplace. In Denmark, sometimes you find people doing practice, from when they're 15. So to have people work great together is based on having respect for what each and every person can bring to the table, and also to have curiosity. If I recall my own childhood, I loved visiting my grandma when a lot of my friends didn't. Why did I do that? Because she was always curious. She was always reading things. She always had the book or an article underlined that she even cropped out of the newspaper, and she gave it to me. She was like, I read this, you're going to love it. And she was curious about my life. She was curious about where I was going out, what was hip, what could she learn from me, and vice versa. And I think what happens, and what I have experienced, is that when people have a preconception about your age, about your nationality, about your gender, about any of that, then they're not open. The moment we're not open and we're not curious, what can I learn from you? What is it that you bring to the table, right? Maybe I'm the expert on 3D, on AR, on home furnishing, I've also worked with fast consumer goods, right? On anything. But what is it that Christina brings to the table? What is it that Alexandra brings to the table? What could I learn, right? How can we complement each other? How can we build together? It's not a you or me. It's a you and me. It's a new generation and an old generation, right? There's so much that we can build on each other and we can leverage on each other. And I think what I have faced is also a scarcity mindset. So if we need to bring more women into the room, then something has to go. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Why do we put the dialogue like that? It's that we also need to invite women as well in. And then there's another part which has to do with how we perceive female leadership. I remember it was the Prime Minister of New Zealand when she stepped down, Jacinda Ardern. She talked about how she was perceived as weak several times because she was compassionate, because she was empathetic, and it was, I would say, groundbreaking moment to see a female leader with such an impact and influence to actually admit out there that she felt that people misunderstood her and saw her as weak because she wasn't assertive enough, because she wasn't firm enough. So it's just to say that if we feel that that happens to us, it's not just in our heads. It's several people that are experiencing it. And I think now that we have younger also female leaders in politics, we can see that, there is a shift in the world. And then we need to support women if we want them to try, right? If we want them to have an impact, then we also need to include them, and we need to allow them to be themselves. We need to allow them to bring a new type of leadership in. And this is something I have also experienced myself. I have received the feedback that I could be more conflict prone. I could challenge people more. I absolutely could. Many people don't know that as a teenager, I gave a really hard time to my father. We had a fight on a daily basis. And believe me, I can build my case and I can fight. But is that how I want to lead? No, it doesn't mean that I cannot do it. It's that I choose not to do it. This is also what I tell my daughter on a daily basis. We choose to be nice. We choose to use good words. We choose to be supportive of others. It's not that it's the easy road. It's actually the hard road. And when it comes to challenges, of course, lack of representation is a challenge. And I cannot tell you that when I go into rooms, I always relate. It's not easy necessarily to relate. And I don't know that many women with children at the age of my daughter that are traveling to the degree that I'm traveling. Everyone makes their own choices, and that's absolutely respectable. But it's also quite hard to see yourself in the room in some cases, and to find also that solidarity and not feel super alone in what you're experiencing. And I think one that also hits me when it happens in terms of challenge is non-inclusive behavior and language. I'm not sure that everybody realizes because people are, used to it. But for me, it's something that I always, I can feel it when I'm sitting in a room. And now I've become also better at calling it out and saying, I would like us to take a pause and be mindful that we don't talk to each other like that. I recall last year, I actually stepped out of a forum. I said, if this is the tone in which we're collaborating, it doesn't represent me. You're very welcome to continue without me, but I would like to take a break. And I stepped out. And I felt good about it because I wasn't honoring myself. It was hard. But it's also, it takes a lot of courage.
Yes, it takes courage, and it also takes this assurance or reassurance that you'll be fine. What do we then advise other women that are in or will soon be in your position of leadership, and they don't necessarily feel like they're represented to the same extent, but they still take on the roles, and they need to navigate this, I'd say, challenging setup for some. For others will be super easy. They'll be like, I'm here because I deserve to be here and I'm ready to take on all the challenges. But for some, it will be difficult. It will be like tiring. And some people will be like, you know what? I don't want to do this. And that's why we lose a lot of women in leadership, because there is a start. And at some point they're like, I don't want to do things this way. I actually want to be myself. And in some organizations, being yourself, it's only on paper. Like, you just don't get the sponsorship if you are being yourself. And I hope that people listening, obviously, I hope they know that of course we have all of these different, I'd say, plans. But in reality, you also have to change some people's perspectives, and that's hard. So it's not a given that people will be like, yeah, sure, we just welcome your plan. Your plan will be challenged at every step. And some people will want to give up, especially women. They'll be like, okay, you know what, I can use this talent somewhere else. So what do you advise them?
It's a good question. I mean, I've been there myself many times. I have been in places where I wanted to give up. It's a constant dialogue, right, with yourself on, is this giving me more than it takes?
Good point. Yeah.
Is it honoring who I am, right? Mm-hmm. There's all those questions you need to ask yourself. And I would say what you need is a strong community.
Yes.
And you need to have people you can rely on. And it's just to say also, it's not only women. It's also, of course, men and many people, depending on what they identified as, that are experiencing this I don't have this specific type of behavior, therefore I'm not automatically accepted into the group, right? So it's just to say that it spans even beyond the gender aspect. And then I think it's very important to know like that you have a place where you can be yourself, where you can go back and sit down and take a break, get the blanket, or whatever you need, get a hug or have a dialogue and say, this has been really hard. And get the energy back to go out and continue standing for what you care about. And I wouldn't call it fighting because fighting makes it sound really hard. I would just say continue being who you are. And for me, that has been, my parents always instilling in me that I can do anything I want. My mother has always been very vocal that I can do anything. It has never been a challenge that because I'm a woman or because I'm a girl or that has not been the case. And then I have a husband who every time I go home and I say, I have an idea, he looks at me, he knows something big is coming, but he has been extremely supportive. Because that's also important to say. I would not be sitting in this chair on a Sunday morning if there wasn't someone that was cheerleading for me, supporting me in the journey. And when I go home and I say I can't do this anymore, that person reminds me of who I am and what I'm great at and what my strengths are and who appreciates me and reminds me that it's okay to also have hard days, right? So I think that community, and for me, also being now heavily involved in the tech industry, it has been a huge comfort to have your community and to join those events and feel that power and that empowerment of building your life and finding other people in the journey. So it's also about look both into podcasts, look into the books, and look into your closest people who can support you. And then also choose, is this really what you want? I agree with you. If it doesn't serve you, don't do it. It's not worth it.
This is great. I think you mentioned way too many things for us to deep dive into everything, but the last point you made about how we can support more women in leadership from a more holistic perspective and even think beyond gender and more about how you are making space and how you are creating that opportunity for everyone to be themselves. I think it should be one of the honestly key takeaways from this interview because I don't know how many people in their daily life think about that. I'm super happy that you get to share all these nuggets of wisdom because I don't know if people know you like this. And you said in the beginning of the interview when we were starting recording that you're really thrilled to be here because this is your first podcast and so on. And I was like, oh my God, there's so much that you can offer. And I hope that this is just the beginning, Christina, honestly. I really hope that you will also get the opportunity to impact way, way, way more people. And I do want to ask you to please share with us as a final piece of advice or sharing your wisdom further. What do you have as, honestly, leadership advice for our listeners that you really think it's achievable and something that you want really people to consider when they finish this interview?
Great question. So I would say, I think we talked a lot about it, but number one is get to know yourself and believe in yourself. Be adamant about that. And I think once you have that, then build a network and talk to people about your purpose. What's important to you? What is the impact you want to drive? And then once you have that is also be intentional about the people you choose around you and the workplace that you choose. Like you said before, we don't always have the luxury to make choices. I have myself migrated through many countries and I have experienced that sometimes you just have to find a place. But look at the core values. And then the last one is dare to leave. Dare to leave the room, dare to leave the company, dare to leave the relationship. It's okay. We can walk away. It's okay to walk away. It takes courage, but it's also important. And that's when a new beginning starts. So dare to have new beginnings. I think that's also very important.
That's so important to know when to leave as well. And to know that you don't need someone else to validate it for you, that you can be sure that it's the right decision for yourself.
Yeah. And also remember that there will be a great place for you. It exists. The world is big. So just have that, write it on a Post-it. There is a place that will, and a person that will appreciate me for who I am. I will be enough and I will be great, not just enough.
That's really fantastic. I feel like I don't even want to ask you more because I feel like that's just the end of the setup. But I do have the final 5 fire questions. So let's just do this fast to get the most out of this interview. What's the one book that you think everyone should read?
Success Under Stress by Sharon Melnick. She's a psychologist and she talks a lot about how to get to know yourself. So that's a book with a lot of questions that you can start answering to get to know yourself. Also how to stay calm, how to manage, from practical tips about how to manage yourself and how to navigate, but also how to prioritize.
Success Under Stress. Fantastic. Yes. Can you share with us what is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
Talk to others about your purpose, not about yourself.
Okay, fantastic. Who is your role model?
That's a hard one because you ask every time and I always think, who would I say? And I would say my grandmother and my mother. It's hard to choose. As I said, parents are the first leaders that we experience in our lives. They have been women that were both teachers, very kind, very respectful, very great at always learning throughout their lives, and also resilient.
Fantastic. What a great also role model to have, your family growing up. If you were to pursue a completely different career path, what would it be?
I would like to be a human rights lawyer.
Okay, I see you doing that. I've never heard this before, by the way, but I definitely see you do that. And the last question, Christina, for today. If you can swap roles with someone for a day, who would that person be and why would you swap roles?
Secretary General of UN. I really thought about that because I would love to be in the shoes for one day and understand what are the biggest humanitarian challenges that we have, but also how are they working actively to prevent them from happening.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So I would love to have those insights.
Wow. Well, I'm sure it's possible. You just said that you need to know the world is big enough, so there's definitely opportunities there. Christina, thank you so much for today. I think we talked about so many important thoughts and reflections to consider for everyone listening. And honestly, I wish you the best with just sharing your potential and actually your gift with as many people as possible, because I think more people should be in your presence and work with you. And I'm sure this is just the beginning. So thank you for spending the time with us and for sharing all this wisdom. I'm really grateful and honestly honored that you're doing this here at FemLead. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, for giving me a platform to share my thoughts. It was a lovely way to spend the Sunday.
It's a lovely way to spend the Sunday. And thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And stay tuned for more interviews with inspiring female role models here at FemLead.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of FemLead Podcast. Share the news with your friends and follow us on social media at FemLead Podcast everywhere.